Joining me now from Jerusalem is Amit Segal, an Israeli journalist who serves as the chief political commentator for Channel 12 News, the author of the newsletter It's Noon in Israel, and the author of the new book, A Call at 4 a.m., 13 prime ministers and the crucial decisions that shaped Israeli politics. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much.
So President Donald Trump has hailed the return of all living Israeli hostages under his Gaza peace plan as the historic dawn of a new Middle East, and says that phase 2 of his ceasefire deal is now underway. But Hamas has not yet returned all the bodies of the remaining hostages and is showing no signs of disarming, while Israel remains in Gaza and still rejects a two-state solution. So is this the dawn of a new Middle East, as President Trump claims?
You know, there is a joke in Israel that the light that you see at the end of the tunnel might be the train in front of you. So we still don't know. President Trump gave two allegedly contradicting pledges. One is that the war is over, and second is that Hamas is to be disarmed. Now, how is it going to happen? The IDF chief of staff asked his American counterparts a few days ago, how do you think it's going to happen? I mean, there are still thousands of Hamas militants in Gaza. Are they going to surrender voluntarily to this non-existing international force? Israel is quite skeptical about this, but we have to say that Israel was a bit skeptical about Hamas releasing all the live hostages. So President Trump gets a credit. This credit line is for something like 2 months, I think, in which Israel will not attack Hamas. But after that, if Hamas does not give the locations of each and every tunnel and gives every RPG and Kalashnikov rifle, I think we'll see more clashes. However, President Trump is quite sure that the pressure put on Hamas by Qatar, Turkey, and the other Sunni states will force it to actually disarm.
And as we've been mentioning, 20 bodies still remain inside Gaza of those hostages. And in response, Israel is now threatening to delay or reduce humanitarian aid deliveries until those bodies are returned. But that punishes Palestinian civilians, doesn't it, yet again? And is that the answer? Is there a better way here?
Okay, so first of all, unfortunately, it's 21 because in the last few minutes, the IDF announced that one of the bodies returned by Hamas belongs to a Gazan and not to an Israeli deceased hostage. So Hamas keeps on with playing. Unfortunately, population suffers when its regime is a terror one. And here's the problem. Israel was almost forced to actually have these sanctions in order to get the bodies. Without those even threats with sanctions, the last 3 bodies would not be returned. And the same applies for the next bodies. So to be honest, I think Hamas is doing it in purpose, and the threats will actually accelerate the pace of returning the deceased hostages. I personally don't see any sanctions imposed at Gaza, but I do see the rest of the at least 10, 12 bodies returned to Israel.
Now, the next phase, as you mentioned, of this ceasefire agreement is being negotiated in Egypt, including Hamas disarming, and you touched on this, and handing over power to a transitional authority, and the Israeli military fully withdrawing from Gaza. So let's start with the governing of Gaza and the disarming of Hamas. What is the best way to do this? I mean, it is complicated, isn't it?
It's very complicated. It's something that has never done before, especially in Gaza. And we have to admit that the experience we have in the Middle East with foreign military powers trying to enforce peace or ceasefire is not very successful. It didn't work in Lebanon with UNIFIL. It didn't work in Syria either with the UN peace forces. And it didn't work in Egypt prior to the 6-day war. But we didn't have back then President Trump. So maybe he'll succeed where everyone else has failed. However, President Trump, and it's quite interesting, did not mention even once the two-state solution in his speech at the Knesset, and I don't think it was a coincidence. He speaks about a Palestinian future very, very vaguely, He said that he doesn't even support the two-state solution. It's up for the parties, he said in the White House a few days ago. So I think this is for the long run. What Israel and what Gaza will see in the next few years, in my opinion, is the two-state solution, but inside Gaza Strip. You will have one area controlled by Hamas in ruins under a fundamentalist Muslim dictatorship, and the other half controlled by Israel from a security perspective and funded by the Emiratis, etc., where you'll have better conditions. And the hope in Israel and in the Emirates is that the Gazan population will actually take Hamas out, because once they see that just a few miles from there is a better future, they'll go there, thus defeating Hamas.
The international community supports a Palestinian state, so we will certainly see what happens on that very sensitive issue. Amit Segal, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.